Hey, this is Chris at Art Secret Studio, and I'm looking at an advanced person's artwork, and she's painting without the whole palette, and I think she's running into trouble because if you only have one color, well, you only use one color. So there's an Italian proverb that I think would help and benefit her tremendously. If you don't mix the color, you won't use it. So let's kind of back up. You know, we're in the advanced class a while back and we're all painting Vasquez's spinners, and Sargent was there. We wanted to know what Sargent saw in the spinners. And before we actually did our copy of Sargent's version, we were copying Vasquez's to see what I would capture from it and what I saw with Vasquez. So let's zoom in a little bit. So what I saw with Vasquez is, so we just hit 5 now. And
I already did it.
okay, so I'm right here. So what Margaret's done a fantastic job with is we have what's called the figure ground relationship. So if this is a green color, that the area next to it would be constantly changing. This is what we got from Vasquez. So she has a green blue, it's a very dark blue right here, then it's a lighter greenish blue, then she's the same color, then she's a grayish, redder, neutral gray brown blue, then a lighter green, then a lighter whatever gray blue. Every quarter inch next to the figure is changing color. And that's the part that we got from Vasquez. Thank you. So what happens with the Vasquez is when your background is the same too long, when your figure ground relationship is the same too long, it runs the risk of being flat and stiff. And what I noticed by looking at Margaret's drawing, I said, well, it's not just the background that has to change. It's not just a figure ground. It's not the ground that has to change. It's the figure too. And I wasn't really so definitive on that until I was looking at her painting thinking, what is wrong with this? I was going to use the word mess, but I'm being recorded, so I can't. No, Margaret's a tremendous artist, so I can tease Margaret even though she's struggling through this painting. Okay, so let's go back to this. So what I'm suggesting is when Margaret paints this yellow, I stole one dry palette for another dry palette. That's so funny, you guys. So I said if you don't mix the color, you won't use it. But if you mixed it and it's dry, it's the same as not mixing it. So if Margaret goes in here and hits some of the lights in some of these greens, and she could go in there with some grays in some of the greens, and in some places, I really think I now see the problem. If the green leaf is darker than what it's around, and then lighter than what it's around. So these might be just lighter all the way around, though the color is changing. The figure relationship is not, where you're lighter than the background, you're darker than the background, and you're lighter. That's the problem. You're just lighter. So you're gonna have to look at the photo really careful and try to figure out, how am I gonna do this? You know, how am I gonna go in here and just, you know, change the color and change the figure ground? And does that mean I have to kind of make some of this up? And this green here is lighter than the background. Do I need to put something in the background that makes that same green now darker than the background? Does that make sense? You know, so you might have to go in and work off the form in some places to make the green that's lighter than the background. Now take that same green right here that's lighter than the background, and against the white, that green becomes darker than the background. And you have a figure ground relationship change. because something's the same too long. And I kept looking at it thinking, this is one of the top pastel artists in the world, though she only puts things in her house and nobody sees it. How come she's having trouble when she's doing what we talked about with Vasquez, making the object lighter and darker and lighter and darker? There is one other thing I did notice. I'm over my 3-minute thing for YouTube, am I? Where am I? 5. Okay.
6.
Okay, I can do this in a minute. Okay, so there's a group of artists that followed Caravaggio. And I don't remember their name. I think they're the Caravaggio-lites. It's a real art history term. And there's a group of these Caravaggio lights. and I looked at all their paintings, and they were lighter and darker, and they were Baroque on steroids, and they were doing everything he did, but their paintings to me were outlined, stiff, and very amateur. The secret to art, I think, is your edges and how hard and sharp your edges are. So it's not just loose and fine, lighter and darker. So I'm not just asking you to lose and fine an edge. I'm also telling you when you lose and fine, you need to be lighter than the background, then you need to be darker and then lighter. And it doesn't have to rotate like that, but it can't just be lighter than the background. Okay. The other thing Margaret has to do is she has to go in here with some of this stuff and actually soften some edges and let them disappear. And emerge, and appear, and emerge, and disappear, and emerge. And yet she needs to maintain that shape and that paw print in the middle of their painting. She has to maintain that shape of that leaf structure while she lets some of the leaves disappear, some be soft, some blurred, some wet into wet, some scumbled, some thick, some thin, some lighter, some darker. So I've just named 10 things that she has to think about because she's not a beginning drawing person like the person manning my phone right now, where we're just dealing with lows and finding edge, lighter and darker. Okay, Margaret understands this, but now I'm telling Margaret, you need to change your color, your temperature, your intensity, the way you make a mark, and lose and find and blur it and scumble it and glaze it, and every technique there is in art to vary your edge. And the way you do it the most is the one that's going to carry your message. And there's a mist in the area. So scumbling would really lend itself. Scumbling is when you just lightly drag over the painting. Let me do it with a lighter color. So scumbling is when you're dragging over it and you're just touching the bumps of the canvas. And I've seen some contemporary artists like Don Demures who does a fantastic job painting water, and he really does drag and scumble his brush. I can't tell if he uses a palette knife or he does a brush like this. And the scumbling is almost as if the particles of air are catching the light and reflecting light. Now, I'm just taking the same color everywhere. That's the same as not doing it. See, every time you make a stroke, you have to go lighter, darker, different color, bright color, gray color. You make 1 or 2 strokes, you change. 1 or 2 strokes and you change. And how do you do that? Well, you have to look. I'm not looking, I'm just, don't do as I say. You have to do, don't do as I say, you have to do what I say. So you have to look hard and say, what am I seeing? I'm seeing purples. Well, why would I see purples? Because there's a coolness to the day, and I need those purple colors. Oh, there's a warmth to the day, and I need those yellows and yellow ochres and the yellow greens. You have to choose, and then I need to see what you're choosing. You're silent, so I'm all ears. Did I mess it up?
No.
Really? You just saying that?
No, I don't think you did.
Really? This time?
Yeah, this time.
What are you thinking?
What I didn't realize until today, one of your talks over here.
This is my third talk today.
I get the lose and find on the edges.
Yeah, me too.
And the arm and everything. But inside, it didn't occur to me till today that you have to do it inside
on the
areas.
form. It didn't occur to me till today.
I mean, that makes sense.
I'm 65 years old. I've been teaching for 40 years. And each week I learn something new about art. That's I'm hoping for you. I'm hoping that this isn't a class that you've learned everything and you're done. I'm hoping this is the beginning of a journey where you open up the idea of saying, what's different today? When I walk the museum, every room is a 25-year, 50-year jump, and something changed, and I'm looking at what just changed? What just changed? And I've been in the same museum 10 times now, and I'm seeing new paintings that have been up forever. And I'd like to say it was a small, tiny Vermeer, but it's a 20-foot Rubens. It's been there all along. Okay, this ceiling's 14 feet. That painting's every bit 14 feet. And I walk past it every time. So you're only ready when you're ready. So I can only plant seeds, and then one day you'll say, oh, I remember something like that. That old guy was talking about this. So does this make sense?